I'm gonna try to watch Doctor Who. See the dinosaur? I'm gonna try to watch Doctor Who with my dog, keep me company. And I'm gonna pause it every now and then and review a part of it to you. Yeah, I've already watched it a couple times, so I have an idea about what I'm gonna say throughout all the parts. If Drew has anything important to say, I'm sure she'll speak up. Happy Thursday, Fall Talkers. This is a watch-along and review that is full of spoilers for Doctor Who's Series 8 premiere, Deep Breath. So if you don't want to know anything about that episode, don't watch this video. Right from the outset, the dinosaur is the wrong size. It's far too large. However, I'm not going to really quibble about that because it is possible that there were some outlier dinosaurs that were this big. That's fine. That dialogue, on the other hand, is something that bothers me. Madame Vastra saying, "I don't know how it time traveled, maybe it's something that it ate," is a ridiculous piece of dialogue. How would that dialogue make sense in any way, shape, or form unless you knew what was about to happen? And it would make no sense to this old-timey constable that she's talking to, who, by the way, accepts time travel a little bit too readily. If this old-timey constable-type person knows what an egg is and that it gets laid, it seems unreasonable to me that it would not know that eggs come out of the bums of things. This was an excuse for the writer of the show to make Madame Vastra say something snarky to a male character, which I find to be a faux feminist move. You're making up a scenario where she is superior to him rather than just having an actual scenario where she would actually be superior to him. She actually is badass. Place these lanterns around the dinosaur. We will never see these devices again. Capaldi is pretty darn good. Capaldi's pretty good. I've been thinking about this for several days, and I have come to the conclusion that I like the Doctor identifying Clara as the not me one, the asking questions one. That's a really complimentary way to describe her, actually. Thingy, I'm not so fond of, but he gets away from that pretty quickly. Just now, the Doctor identifies the dinosaur as the big woman rather than the big man. One assumes because he understands dinosaur language, and the dinosaur just corrected the Doctor's gendering. Now, how the dinosaur understands human language is not clear, but the Doctor is respectful of the dinosaur's request for gender labeling. That's great. And then as soon as he identifies the dinosaur as a big woman, he says that he's not flirting with the big woman. Why would that even occur to the Doctor? Why would flirting be where his mind goes in his interactions with a creature as soon as he identifies the creature as female? It wouldn't. It wouldn't go there. Moffat's would, though. And then he confuses Clara and Strax. That just feels insulting. So keep in mind that right here, before the title sequence begins, Clara is the one who says this is the Doctor. She doesn't say it uncertainly. She clarified that for Jenny, who did not see the transformation, that Clara had seen. Having just seen the title sequence, I see that this episode is written by Stephen Moffat, so that already explains a great deal. Remember that before the title sequence, there was a plan to keep the dinosaur constrained within the sonic lanterns, within the circumference of the sonic lanterns. I did like the confusion the Doctor felt wherein he thought that his Scottish accent was the normal and that their English accent was the unusual one. And I liked Madame Vastra's approach to calming him down by pretending to have a Scottish accent. Although honestly, it did not sound very strong to me after the first couple of words. There are a few things that are puzzling about this interaction between the Doctor and Madame Vastra. First of all, she knows that the Doctor can project something into somebody else's mind, so he is a telepathic pusher. She knows that, and he accepts that. Okay, that's a little weird. Secondly, she's apparently aware of the fact that it's not going to work on her, and will somehow bounce back at him. Has she done this with the Doctor before? Does she know a lot of Gallifreyans? Because he's a Gallifreyan, he's not a human. And thirdly, when it bounces back at him, there's a cartoon honking sound? What? I think what's happening is that Stephen Moffat is attempting to make Madame Vastra appear to be a feminist, but he's really just making her an asshole sexist. Which is kind of telling. A lot of misogynists think that feminists are in fact just sexists in the other direction. Clara wants to change the Doctor back. So she does accept that he is the Doctor, and she doesn't understand why his face has changed, I guess, despite the fact that she's experienced all of the Doctor's faces up until this point. Are we going to forget that that episode happened? Has she forgotten that that episode happened? Isn't she the girl who fell through time to save the Doctor through all of his different incarnations? What the F? If that were the case, that she really did not remember that this is a natural part of the Doctor being the Doctor, then it makes perfect sense for her to think, why can't we turn him back to the way he was? Because before, he had the body of someone younger, and now he has the body of someone older. Once again, Madame Vastra's interactions with the people around her make it seem like the people think that she's really smart, but she's actually just being an asshole. What's wrong with the dinosaur? Maybe the dinosaur doesn't want to be kept in one place by the Sonic Lanterns. Clara's reactions to the Doctor's older-looking face make no sense. Didn't she even encounter the 10th Doctor in that anniversary episode? I think that she did. And maybe the War Doctor as well. She saw the War Doctor with all his face and all of his old face and greatness. Clara's question to Jenny is also insulting as hell because, you know, people actually do change. They get older. They look different as they age. Clara's asking, if the woman that you love got older, would you stop loving her? What the f***? Let's talk about Strax's inability to remember that Clara has told him she identifies with female pronouns. It is not as if Strax has no intellectual capabilities. Strax is a medical professional. Strax can identify human being spleens, but can't remember that Clara says that she is a she, despite the fact he has no difficulties apparently recalling that Jenny is a she, and that Madame Vastra is a she, but he insists on calling Clara a boy. That's not funny. That's, again, Moffat being a dick in his writing, and conferring that to the characters he writes. The clothes thing makes no sense. Strax is wearing clothes. I can see the hat versus hair thing. He is around Madame Vastra, who also has no hair. He has no hair. Jenny does have hair, but that's the one person with whom he associates on a regular basis. So, the hat versus hair thing, I'll get. But the clothes thing is just nonsensical. Can we talk about how this old-timey lady who's talking to Ralphie does a great little performance within a couple of minutes? She's excellent. So this Madame Vastra and Clara exchange pisses me off because it makes no sense. For the entire series up until now, I have seen zero indication that Clara had any feelings toward the Doctor. Matt Smith's the Doctor, the dashing young gentleman. Let alone that she thought of him as her lover. For crying out loud, the 11th Doctor's wife existed. You know, River Song, she was the thing, he's married. The barely veiled references to the dynamics of Madame Vastra and Jenny's relationship again make me feel like Moffat is trying to convey some sort of feminist, equal women sensibility here. But what he's really doing is he's showing Madame Vastra acting like, again, just like an asshole sexist guy. Claire is a made-up character. She doesn't have to act like this. Moffat wrote her to act like this. Moffat is being a dick with his two characters and making you think that you can side with Moffat / Madame Vastra against Clara. That's ridiculous. The Doctor's writing on the floor is for no reason at all. Literally in the same breath, Clara says that she's never been interested in pretty young men, and then defends her ability to flirt with a mountain range. I'm not saying that those two statements are contradictory to each other, but at the very least, they don't come from the same defensive position. What is the latter statement to prove? That she could, in fact, flirt with the Doctor if she wanted to? It makes no sense. And then she accuses Madame Vastra of being attracted to her, and Madame Vastra does not deny it, and Jenny applauds her. Madame Vastra often wondered what Clara would be like if she lost her temper, and then Jenny apparently got jealous of her making that observation because they're married to each other? What? the veil thing is just, again, nonsensical. It's one of those things which sounds clever and wise, but in fact is just ridiculous. Madame Foster had literally asked Jenny to bring her veil, so all the evidence that the audience is given is that the veil is real. And then instead of telling Clara, well, when you were yelling at me, I just took it off, Madame Foster tries to say something that sounds smart. When you stopped seeing it is when it was... No, you literally had to remove the veil. And now you're not giving a straight answer because you're an asshole. I brought you along by accident. That's mostly how I meet girls. Strax uses a remote to close the door of the coach, which goes beep beep. It behaves pretty identically to how you would expect a car door lock to work in the year 2014. Except that Strax has never been to the year 2014, and he's not human. Nor is Madame Vastra. And Jenny, while she is human, also has never been to the year 2014. That joke makes no sense. Why would the appropriate question to ask when you see a dinosaur burst into flames be, have there been any similar murders? If we assume that the Doctor is smart enough to jump ahead a couple of steps in deduction and realize that the reason why the body of the dinosaur is being destroyed is to cover up some sort of evidence of foul play, that's great, that's fine, I could imagine him being that clever, but then you'd want to know what about the dinosaur is being hidden, and you wouldn't necessarily know that this has happened more than one time. Someone jumps in the river and you think they're going to drown. Even for a human being, I would say that that's unlikely. For a Time Lord who has literally proven in front of her eyes that he can regenerate from life-threatening situations, even less likely. Why has he jumped in the river? Jumping in the river won't get him to the dinosaur murderer any faster than, say, getting on the horse he just got off of. Getting on the horse he literally just gotten off of to get here. The throwing the newspaper joke is pretty funny, but more important here, Strax referred to her as Miss Clara. He does know that she identifies female. Strax says Clara and starts off by complimenting her appearance, which makes no sense for him to do because he doesn't really understand humans' appearances. And then he insults her appearance, which once again makes no sense for him to do because he does not understand humans' appearances. Strax's medical examination of Clara makes no sense. How are you able to see deflected narcissism and passive aggressivity? Since we, the audience, have seen no sign of this, we are literally being told characteristics about someone, again, to hate her. Moffat is trying to make us dislike Clara. Not by actually showing us her actions are bad, but by telling us that she's bad via a third party in the form of Strax. And these scantily clad muscular men, we just had a scene where Clara protested that she wasn't interested in handsome young men. So either she was lying then, or again, this is just an attempt to make her look bad. But even if she were thinking of scantily clad young men doing sport, so what? Why is that a big deal, Moffat? Women can think about sexy things. It is okay. It is not, in fact, incriminating of a woman's character to think about sexy things. Why do you think that that is, Moffat? And now again, Strax refers to Clara as my boy, despite the fact they referred to her as Miss Clara in the previous scene. The scene with the Doctor and the bearded man in the alleyway is a pretty good scene. The way Madame Vastra tricks her wife, Jenny, into posing is very dismissive and objectifying and kind of belittling of her wife. Is Madame Vastra an example of a character who has internalized misogyny? Possibly. But I think more likely this is just a continuing representation of how Moffat sees women treating each other. How he imagines it. And then as Clara joins Madame Vastra and her wife, who as far as we know are monogamous, Madame Vastra suggests that Clara take off her clothes as well. Moffat is making his women characters objectify each other. Clara makes the declaration that the Doctor doesn't do complicated. He doesn't have the attention span for it. That makes no sense based on what we have seen Clara see the Doctor do. We've seen Clara see the Doctor keep secrets from her, manipulate her, lead her down paths to different things, lie to her, trick her. He does in fact do complicated. He does it all the time. Moffat is again making his characters say things in order to make us believe those things without showing us those things are true. And in this case, it makes no sense. It's obviously not true. And if the idea is that this puzzle of the Impossible Girl advertisement is simple, and the Doctor also figured it out, that means the Doctor thinks that Clara is also that simple. Egomaniac, needy game player. Those do fit the Doctor. They don't fit Clara. These are again things that characters are telling us as written by Moffat to make us think things that we haven't been shown. It is inexplicable and gross that the Doctor removes an actual human face from this robot and then puts it on Clara's face. What? Why would you do that? And why would the robot say that they do have a kids menu? The peculiar familiarity that they have between them when the Doctor needs to get the sonic screwdriver out of his pocket and in a usable fashion indicates that Clara and the Doctor have gotten out of similar scrapes before, which means that Clara at this point is treating the Doctor like the Doctor. So, wasn't that part of the conflict of the whole episode? As other reviewers have pointed out, the first appearance of a person of color character in this episode, someone who actually speaks, is the girl troublemaker in Clara's flashback to when I guess she was a teacher to a bunch of rowdy kids. I'm glad that there is any person of color in this episode, but that is poor casting. The waiter in the restaurant could have been made a person of color. Clara's assertion that you shouldn't start with your grade sanction first, because then you'll have to work backwards, is a sound assertion. 5'1" and crying, you never stood a chance. Okay. So the Doctor was relying upon a robot's empathy for a human being? Or did he think that a 5'1" and crying woman was particularly dangerous? That's one of those throwaway statements that sounds clever, but has no substance to it. The Doctor was going to apologize if his tactic of abandoning Clara had been fruitless. And then he takes back his apology because even though Clara was terrified and hurt by being abandoned, it was effective in gathering information. So he's not sorry because he got what he wanted. This Doctor is a dick. Also, the Doctor is gaslighting Clara into thinking that she's a control freak, despite the fact that she has shown no evidence of being a control freak. The Doctor is a control freak. She is just being emotionally abused by him. I will say, I did like the comparison of a slaughterhouse to any other restaurant unless you're vegetarian. I'm vegetarian. I like that bit. The dialogue, once again, doesn't make any sense, and it is set up just for a joke reveal. The ship has been repaired. I cannot imagine that a character would actually respond to that with, "What with?" You might respond to it with, "How?" "What with" was entirely a setup for the response of, "with you," which also does not make sense, because none of them have been used to repair anything. It's almost identical to the threatening scene where Tony Stark threatens Loki but offers him a drink in The Avengers. So this Doctor is a Doctor who doesn't mind going right to killing someone. I wasn't sure about it at first, but in the end, I really kind of enjoyed how this Doctor keeps trying so hard to remember his experiences on the Madame de Pompadour, but can't quite get there. The answer to how are you powering it is not skin. My guess is that steam or hot air or something along those lines is being used to power this escape pod, but the skin is being used to capture it and help it rise. There's no sure way of saying that, but the fact that a robot says something that is obviously not accurate is weird and wrong. It's a shame they can't climb up those silks they used to come down. So it's not just me. The Doctor also thinks that this robot acts not robot. Acts like it's more human than machine at this point. On the one hand, I do like the Doctor telling Half-Faced Man that he is a broom whose parts have been replaced. But then, so is the Doctor, isn't he? What part of the Doctor is the same as the previous Doctors? So do Madame Vostra and Jenny have a psychic link that I don't recall them ever mentioning before, ever? And would not explain why Madame Vostra was able to trick Jenny into posing for art? Are they just thinking separate thoughts and it sounds like a conversation when it's not really a conversation? So Jenny doesn't understand why Madame Vostra is kissing her in the middle of all this? Strax is from a warrior race that refuses to turn its back on its enemies. It doesn't make any sense that he would try to kill himself with a gun to the face. Not if he could keep on fighting until he's destroyed. Drew is rolling around in agreement with me. Also, the destruction of the control node causing all the other nodes to fail, in this case the robots all to collapse, is such a lazy piece of writing. It was interesting to me when I first saw it in ID4, Independence Day. For all I know, it's been used tons of times before that, but that's the first time I saw it. And since that point, since ID4, it's been used dozens, maybe hundreds of times. Stop doing that, writers. Be better. So allegedly the half-faced man is dead, and I guess he died by falling onto the steeple of a church? Was the half-faced man the Jesus Christ of the robots? And then the Doctor breaks the fourth wall by looking at the audience. Is that to say that he is a doctor that kills? He pushed the robot out of the escape pod thing? I guess the Paternoster gang escaped the underground of the basement somehow? By themselves? They couldn't do it when they were fighting the robots, but they did it afterwards? I do like that Clara's default outfit in this episode is her little cardigan with bow ties on it. Undoubtedly in homage to the 11th Doctor. I've made many mistakes, and it's about time I did something about that. That line is the most exciting thing about this episode for me, because that raises my hopes that what we're going to see the Doctor do is go on a mission back through all of his previous exploits and fix the things that he messed up, which would be really, really cool. I would love to see that. That sounds like a great idea. The boyfriend line bugs me because, again, at no point did I think of the 11th as being Clara's boyfriend, or of thinking of himself as Clara's boyfriend. He flirted with River Song. The whole ending bit pisses me off because Clara says that she doesn't know who he is. He's been acting like the Doctor the whole freaking episode, which for them spans at least a week, if not a couple. I think I liked all of that interaction between the 11th and Clara and the 12th. The two sides of the Doctor trying to convince Clara that he's just the one. I still don't think that it needed to be done, but the way that they're doing it is nice. Which basically tells me that this whole freaking episode was written to try to convince us that Clara wouldn't believe in the 12th Doctor until this happened, to justify this happening. That is a cheat, despite the fact that I like this scene. I'm just standing in front of you, a Time Lord, and standing in front of a woman, asking her to believe him. I'm sure that Moffat wrote the hugging without the Doctor wanting to be hugged scene to be cute and touching, but all it tells me is that he still hasn't figured out what consent is about. The 11th Doctor violated consent, and now Claire is violating consent against the 12th Doctor. And then we get to the scene that makes the least sense. The half-faced man robot died. If he didn't die, the other robots would not have failed. As much as I hate that conceit, that is explicitly stated by the Doctor and then proven accurate. So how is this version of the half-faced man not dead and waking up somewhere? And Missy is unpleasant. Is she a reincarnation of the Master? That's one rumor that I've heard online. That would be interesting. She looks like Mary Poppins, acts like a Time Lord / River Song, and is in a place that doesn't make any sense. This episode is not an improvement on Moffat's previous episodes in terms of quality of narration, quality of concepts contained. Bye, Drew. It is an improvement by Moffat in hiding what a crappy writer he is, and in trying to convince us to believe things without actually showing us things. Capaldi's acting is so compelling that it makes me want to like the episode, but then it doesn't mean that the episode's good or that the story's well written. Jenna Coleman's acting was fantastic. I'm glad of it, but the writing that she was given to act was still horrible. My final review is, I liked Capaldi and Jenna Coleman. The Paternoster gang was fine for who they were. They acted their hearts out. They were all given really horrible writing, and they did a fantastic job of making the horrible writing seem not horrible. There are those, even my friends, who say, if you are so contentious and critical about Doctor Who, why don't you just stop watching it? And I say to them, if a friend of yours got into a bad relationship where they're being treated like crap by their significant other, would you just abandon your friend because every time you're around them you see them in a crappy relationship? Or would you point out the problems and hope that things get better? I'm not going to abandon my friend of my entire life just because it's in a relationship with Moffat that sucks. I'm just going to complain about how bad Moffat is to this series. Yeah. Alright. If you actually stuck with me to the very end, I am amazed, but thank you. If you like this, please give me a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe below. Leave me your comments, questions, and suggestions. I'm sure that I'm asking for a lot of arguments, but I'll be curious to see what you thought of my thoughts. And as always, thank you for watching, and tomorrow will be even better. I like that sign-off. I think I'm gonna keep it. Oh look, it's still my dog on my shirt. It's the same day. It's the same day.